everyone, welcome and thanks for tuning in to our final installment of the Zero Waste series from the Elkhart Environmental Center. Today we're going to be talking about the last topics of our series, which are special events and continuing zero waste once you have the basics down. So if you're new to the zero waste movement, I'll just give a brief overview if you weren't at the first meeting. The goal is zero waste, but right now, the society we live in and the way the economy is and the way things are produced, zero isn't really possible, which is unfortunate, but it's always the end goal. So we're always looking for improvements and small changes we can do to make less waste. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit. Throughout the series, we've been focusing on the book 101 Ways to Go Zero Waste by Catherine Kellogg. And I personally really love this book because all of her tips for going zero waste are very simple, and the sections of the book that she divides them up into are quick, easy reads. So if you don't have a lot of time, this is a really great resource. Like I mentioned earlier, today we're going to be talking about Catherine's tips that focus on hosting more sustainable special events like birthday parties, holiday parties, anything like that. And then we'll also be talking about how to get involved with your local community and get more people into the zero waste movement. We won't be talking about all of these tips that you see listed on the screen because if you've read the book, you have already read about them. And if you haven't read the book, I would highly encourage you to get your hands on a copy because there's a lot of good information in there. But for now, we're just going to focus on those two main topics. So to start off, we're going to talk about how you can make your special events a little bit more sustainable. And doing so doesn't necessarily mean that you have to replan everything and make huge changes. It's really just about being mindful of your impacts and making small changes that can really do a lot to reduce your waste. When you start off planning your event, whether it's a family holiday gathering or it's a children's birthday party, the first thing that you tend to think about is probably sending your invitations. So, invitations aren't necessarily terrible for the environment, but depending on what kind you use, if it's a photo paper invitation, those can't be recycled. So, you just want to be mindful of what materials you're using when you're sending these invitations. And one of the most zero waste options would be to send a virtual one, like in an email, because that doesn't have to be disposed of at all. Or if you don't want to go that route, you could always use recycled paper. So you could find pre-made invitations that are made from 100% post-consumer paper goods. You could also look for items that can be recycled again, so things like normal paper, nothing glossy or shiny. And if you want to get creative and a little bit extra fun, you could always look for seed paper invitations that you can print directly onto. I will note that if you go the seed paper route, a lot of times they include species that are invasive. They aren't necessarily native to our area. So if you do go with seed paper, just be careful and research what seeds are in the paper so you're not unintentionally spreading invasives to your guests. Also, if you're not sure what seed paper actually is, if you've never heard of it before, it's just paper that has wildflower seeds embedded in it so that when you're done with the paper, you can actually go out into your garden, bury it just a little bit, cover it with a little bit of soil, make sure it gets water, and then eventually the goal is for some wildflowers to sprout. Also, when you're planning your event, you want to take into consideration your venue. So if you're hosting the event at your own residence or a family member's residence, that makes it a lot easier because you can make pretty much all of the decisions. If you're hosting at a venue like a banquet hall or something similar, it's good to just talk to the organizers at that facility and let them know that you're striving for a low waste event. And that way you can kind of work out some details that will hopefully mitigate the waste that's produced. For example, if they usually use disposable items like plates and silverware, You can talk to them, let them know that if they do have an option for real utensils and plates, that you would prefer that so that those disposables aren't going to the landfill. And finally, just kind of try to think ahead as much as possible. So try to plan where you think there might be high waste areas at your event. If typically in the past you've had a lot of food waste, you could always plan to have a compost bin available so that way if people do have food scraps, instead of throwing them in the trash, they can be composted and return nutrients to the soil. Also, just think about the little things that maybe you wouldn't have before. Things like party favors. A lot of times, especially at young children's parties, you get a bunch of little plastic toys or just little trinkets, and a lot of times they end up just getting lost or thrown out. So that's not really necessary. You don't have to give party favors. It has been a tradition, but a lot of times people just want to enjoy the party. They don't need a little trinket to take home with them because most of the time they're not going to keep it for very long anyway. One of the highest waste areas from special events comes from decorations. We've probably all been in the situation where we go out and buy streamers and balloons and those shiny banners that really make everything look festive. But a lot of times, a few hours later after we decorate, we just end up tearing those all down and throwing them in the trash. They almost never get reused. People don't feel like storing them and trying to take them down carefully. So when you're planning, really think about whether or not you need those disposable decorations. They may look very nice set up in your house for a few hours during the party, but just remember that when you take them down and put them in the trash can, they're going to be ending up in a landfill for quite a while. It's important too to remember that not necessarily everything that you throw in the trash makes it to the landfill. So things like balloons, if those get freed and they're floating through the air, they have to end up somewhere. And a lot of times that is tangled in a tree or in a waterway somewhere, and that can pose a lot of risks to our wildlife. Now, just because we want to stay away from disposable decorations like balloons and streamers and banners doesn't mean that you can't decorate for your party. There are a lot of other more eco-friendly options out there. So I have some listed on the screen that you can see here. If you are going to invest in decorations, it's good to try and find sturdy, durable items that can last for a long time. It's not going to be one of those things that you buy and it breaks and then you have to buy another one 6 months later. You want to look for things that have a long life and that can be multifunctional. So if you find a really nice centerpiece for your party table, maybe you can look for one that would be good for different holidays, different themes, anything that can be versatile. You can also make your own decorations by recycling or upcycling old items. For example, if you have a really nice old jar from maybe peanut butter or spaghetti sauce, you could clean that out really well and maybe throw some old twine or string that you have from a past gift. You could put that around it and maybe fill it with flowers. You could also look at thrift stores for secondhand decorations. Now, while you're still buying decorations from a store, if you get them secondhand, the store isn't going to go over that shelf and replace those purchased items with new items. So you're giving them a second life and you're being a little bit more of a responsible consumer because you're not driving that need to constantly produce more and always fill the shelves with new products. Natural items can also be a really great option for decorating for your special event. If you have a garden and you don't mind cutting a few of the flowers out of there, you could make a natural centerpiece and that will really brighten up the room. And personally, I think those look better than artificial flowers. You could also use things like orange slices, cut them up, bake them at a very low temperature for a few hours. And as you can see in the picture, they get kind of dried and they make a really beautiful garland. You can also just get creative and use some pine cones and evergreen sprigs in a bowl, and that smells really good naturally. There are a whole lot of options for using natural items for decorating. And the best part about using natural items to decorate is that when you're done with them, you can just throw them in the compost so they aren't contributing to the landfill and instead they're renourishing the soil. Next up, we're going to be talking about meals and how you can avoid a lot of waste in that area. So, to start off, probably the most obvious thing is just don't use disposable products. Skip the paper plates and the plastic utensils, the paper napkins. A lot of times, using real plates, napkins, and utensils looks better anyway. It looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer, and fancier. And you might have to wash the dishes after your event, but you can feel good about knowing that all of those disposable products that you didn't use won't be filling up the landfill. And as an added bonus, you can save money. If you're having a small event with maybe just like 10 to 15 people, you probably already have enough silverware and plates. You don't have to worry about going to the party store and finding those disposable plates and utensils in the right color to match your theme. You can just use what you already have and save yourself some money. Another great and really easy tip is to just let guests serve themselves when it's mealtime. If someone doesn't like a certain food or they only want a small portion of it, a pre-portioned plate is going to end up with a lot of food waste because they can't really put it back. It's already dished out on their plate. So just let your guests decide for themselves how much they want, and hopefully they'll just take what they're actually going to eat and not let it result in waste. Once everyone has eaten and everyone's had their fill, make sure you're smart about the leftovers. So if you have things like dairy products or meat that need to be refrigerated, make sure that you put them in the refrigerator before that 2 hour mark when bacteria starts to grow. You don't want to have to throw out an entire dish just because you forgot to throw it in the fridge. You can also send leftovers home with their guests if they want to take them. I like to hoard glass jars from old products. I clean them out really well and then I reuse them and I can send leftovers home in them. So I'm reusing an old jar. I'm not wasting plastic wrap and disposable plates. People can just take them home in those little portioned containers. And if you don't want to send them home with guests, you can always just reuse the leftovers for your work or school lunches during the week. Next up, we're going to be talking about gifts. So, one of the things that we can probably all have in common about gifts is that we've received something that was really well intentioned and it was very kind of the person who gave it to us, but we don't really want it or we don't really need it. And then we end up keeping it anyway for a few years because we feel guilty and we don't want to throw it out. So, here are a few steps to kind of help you avoid that. Before you actually purchase an item as a gift, ask yourself if you're only buying it because the social norm tells you that you should buy someone a gift. A lot of times we buy gifts and they may just end up being thrown in the Goodwill box, or it's something that the person can't use, so it really just sits in their house for a while. It's not necessary to always get a gift. And a lot of times, if you get one and it's of no use to the person, it's really more of a burden. So just consider that before you actually purchase anything. If you are set on buying a gift for someone, try to find out what they actually need and could use. Don't just assume that they might like this fancy new item that you might like, but they don't really have a use for. You can also consider getting someone a sustainable gift. So, things like native plants and seeds can be really nice because someone can plant those and they can enjoy them for seasons one after another. You can also go to a bulk grocery store, take your own jars and baggies, and fill up on candies and treats that the person might like. You could also get them use up items like lotion bars or soap, and they'll use those items, and when they're done, they're done. They don't have to go to the landfill. If you really want to get next level zero waste, you can gift an experience instead of a material item. So if someone has a favorite coffee shop, you could offer to take them out on a coffee date and pay for their drinks and snacks. You could do the same thing with movie tickets or mini golf or any activities that the person really likes and enjoys. And that has an added bonus of spending quality time with the person. Now, if you do decide to get the person a gift, you can make the wrapping sustainable too. Consider using old materials like butcher paper or packing paper, newspaper, anything that you already have on hand to use as wrapping paper. Some wrapping paper that you purchase from the store is recyclable, but others, anything that's shiny or glossy or has glitter on it, that is not recyclable. So you want to avoid those. And it's more the zero waste way to use what you already have on hand anyway. If you don't like the look of the plain paper from butcher paper or newspaper, you can always decorate it. You can make your own drawings or add little garnishes like a sprig of lavender, anything that's natural that could be composted and just adds a nice little touch to the top of your gift. You can also use fabric to wrap presents, and there's a lot of good tutorials online. So if you just type that into YouTube, you can usually find a lot of good videos. And that can have an added bonus of if you are gifting a towel or a cloth napkin, you can actually use it to wrap the gift and it's part of the gift. So, to sum up this portion about hosting sustainable events, just plan ahead and identify some of the parts of your event that might produce a lot of waste. Try and research some ideas, just easy tips that aren't going to take a lot of effort that will help you to produce less waste in those areas. Keep things simple. If you're hosting, the real focus is about the people who are there and the experience of the party. It's not about the decorations and the presents that are there. Use materials that can be reused and are multifunctional. So, decorations, dinnerware, anything that you can use at future events so that you don't have to buy more. And really just use the opportunity to share your zero waste ideas with your guests. So, if someone asks you why you're using real plates instead of disposable, let them know that it's important to you that you're not sending things to the landfill when you're only going to be using them for maybe 20 minutes. It's better to take the time to just wash your dishes than have that waste exist for so long. Having a zero waste event or even just a low waste event doesn't mean that it has to change and you have to make tons of effort to adapt your habits. It just means making small, better choices that will help the environment. So now that we've covered sustainable events, and in previous meetings we've covered areas like the home and being zero waste at work or at school, we're going to talk about what you can do once you have those zero waste personal choices basics down. One of the best things that you can do for both yourself and others around you is to just find people who share your interests. Find other people in your community that also care about sustainable habits and reducing their waste. Because once you have a support network, it makes your choices a lot easier and you can bounce ideas off of each other. Consider joining a local group that either focuses on sustainability or maybe even specifically zero waste. And if you don't have one in your community, maybe you could consider starting one. You can do group projects like community cleanups if there's a lot of litter in certain parts of your town. You could do DIY zero waste workshops where you teach people how to make their own lotion bars so that they don't have to buy lotion packaged in plastic. You could also start community gardens to teach the people around you about sustainability and growing your own food, teaching them about where your food comes from. You can also host resource shares so that if you have a lot of ideas or you have websites that you visit that help you in your sustainability, you can share those with other people so they can take advantage of them as well. You can also form groups and advocate for sustainable actions within your community. So, if you have local restaurants that always give a straw with drinks, you could write them a letter, talk to the manager, and ask them if they would be willing to have a straw only on request policy where people only get a straw if they specifically ask for it. And if it might be too difficult to gather people in the community because of competing schedules and busy lives, you can always take to social media to find community. You may not be able to meet in person as often as you'd like, but you still have that support where you can share your ideas with others and get new ideas from them. And if you can't find a group either in person or online specifically for your area, there are online groups and blogs that are maybe national or even international where you can find community. So if you stay up to date with maybe some zero waste bloggers or sustainability websites, you can look at those comments and join chats and get connected with people who share your interests in that way as well. I've also found personally that having a zero waste buddy or two can help. So, one of my friends shares my interests and likes to try to reduce her waste. So, anytime that either of us sees a new refill shop or a new reusable product, we nerdishly text each other a picture and we both get very excited. So, it's just good to have that person that shares your interests and is kind of helping you along your journey as well. And it makes it more fun. If you are interested in staying up to date with the zero waste movement and finding community online, I've listed a few really great resources here. So, these are some of the biggest names in zero waste, but this is by no means a comprehensive list. There are many, many amazing people out there that take the time to help others on their journeys. So, here I've shown Bea Johnson, who has written the book Zero Waste Home, and she also has a website. She focuses a lot on family life because she has two sons and a husband. So, all together, they kind of work as a team to reduce their waste. Lauren Singer is another blogger. She's got a lot of great articles on her site, Trash is for Tossers. She pretty much covers any topic you can think of. So, if you go to her site and just type your idea in the search bar, there's a good chance you'll find something that covers it. Anne Marie Bonneau is a zero waste chef. She runs that website. She has lots of nice recipes where you can make your own products that may traditionally come in plastic packaging. But she also has different articles about sustainability topics, so that's fun to explore as well. And Catherine Kellogg was our focus author for this series. So if you've read her book, you already know that she has a lot of great tips. And she also has her website, Going Zero Waste, which has pretty much everything that's covered in the book with even more information on a whole variety of topics. And I will add that all of these women are very encouraging and non judgmental. They all focus on the idea that zero waste is about making small changes and letting those add up to a pretty big impact in your life. They don't try to shame or guilt people about the changes that they aren't able to do. So they're a lot of help to have if you're struggling in that area. And on that note, I know that it can be discouraging when you feel like you're only doing small things and you eventually you might feel like you're not making much of a difference. But try your best to push those thoughts out because every little thing you do does count. It may not seem like it, but you can literally see that you're producing less trash with even just small changes like using one cloth napkin instead of a bunch of paper napkins over time. Try to ignore people who are skeptical of your choices. If you want to bring your own straw into a restaurant, that is your choice. It doesn't affect anyone else, so if they have a problem with it, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. And you might hear people say, do you really think that your individual actions have any effect when there's billions of other people who aren't doing these things? And that can be discouraging for sure. But also, just try to remember that each little thing does count. And if no one was doing these small changes, we would be in a lot worse place than we are right now. Take the time to educate people too if they ask you questions about your lifestyle. If they are wondering why you bring your own utensils or straw or jars wherever you go, you can let them know that it's important to you to reduce your single use plastic waste. And you never know who you might inspire. And oftentimes, if you find out that you have affected someone in that way, where you've now encouraged them to bring their own items, that can be a real boost of encouragement and keep you motivated to stay on your zero waste journey. So now that you have all of these tips for getting the basics down for zero waste and maybe getting involved in your community, what's next? Once you kind of know, okay, I should bring my own jars, I should use a reusable water bottle, I should try to find reusable products instead of disposable, what else can you do? I think that it's best to just continue making small changes. You don't have to completely change your lifestyle overnight. Now that you have this information, you're equipped with it so that when you're ready, you can make these small changes. And it doesn't have to be 5 small changes a day, every day. It can be maybe next week I won't use paper towels. And maybe the week after that, I'll go out and buy my own straw. It's just about the small things that add up. The zero waste movement also is really not supposed to be taking over your life and changing every aspect of it. Ultimately, it's just about being mindful of your actions and how those actions have an impact on the environment and our planet. So, just keeping that in the back of your mind can really help you when you're making choices. It's also really beneficial to find what exactly you're passionate about in terms of sustainability and sharing it with the people around you because a lot of times teaching is the best way for you to grow. So, if you're especially concerned about helping others recycle properly, you could take that route and help people in your community. Or maybe you're really interested in native plants and growing your own food and you love gardening. You can share that with others so that they can grow their own items and they don't have to go to the store and buy it in packaging. There are many different ways that you can share your passion and encourage others to make more eco friendly choices. And lastly, just don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like I said at the beginning of this presentation, zero is always the goal, but at this point, it's not a reality. No one is perfect, and no one has the ability to produce literally zero waste. Just know that the small changes that you are making are important, and you should keep doing them, even if people around you say that you're not making much of a difference. You're doing good things, so just keep them up and feel good about them. Because this is the final session in our Zero Waste series this year, I just wanted to take a minute or two to share some of my final thoughts with everyone who's been keeping up with these resources and videos and doing their best to make those little changes. And as a final message, I just want everyone to remember that no matter how small, your changes are making a difference and you're helping the planet. And just by doing these things, you're actually a living example to others, whether you know it or not. So stay encouraged and keep zero wasting. If you ever have any questions or need additional encouragement or want some more resources and information about zero waste, please feel free to reach out. My email is on the screen there. It's environmental.intern2@coei.org, and I would be more than happy to help you with anything that I can. And if you missed previous meetings, so we had our kickoff meeting, meeting 1, 2, and 3. If you would like the resources and information from those past sessions, you can also shoot me an email and I would be more than happy to send those along to you so you have them to read. And lastly, I would just like to extend an additional thank you to all of you for taking the time to watch this video and past videos and read through the resource emails. It's been a pleasure hearing your ideas and just very encouraging to know that there are people out there who are willing to make a difference and take the time to do so. So thank you again, and I hope your zero waste journey goes well for you in the future.